Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Alyson Laura. So some of you listening have come across Alison maybe in a class or one of her passionate pieces of education that she's putting out here on the GBES team. So it's fun to really show everyone a glimpse into Alison's career and then kind of see what's going on. What does she still aspire to do when it comes to sustainability? So we've got a lot to cover. But Alison, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Charlie. It's my pleasure to be here and tell my own story.
Let's go through and talk about, early in your career. Tell us, about where you grew up and then, where you went to college. I know we share that alma mater, but Let's tell the audience here. So tell us about some of your early growing up in school.
Sure thing. So I grew up in South Florida. I stayed there until I was 18 and left the state of Florida to go to college. And I feel like that actually gave me kind of a leg up on sustainability because in South Florida, Miami, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, they've always been afraid of sea level rise, right? Even when I was in elementary school, our teachers were talking about all the things we need to do to make sure that we can still live in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And so recycling was huge, composting was huge, rainwater catchment was huge. And I guess I can also attribute that to my parents, who would bring us to family festivals and, community events. But there was actually a lot of support. I felt like the municipalities were always trying to give away rain barrels. We always had one on our house. And I think partially that is a regional thing, right? South Florida gets so much rain. We've got tons of problems with flooding because you're so close to sea level. The water's not infiltrating down. It's just draining. That's where there's canals everywhere. So I think just because of that location-specific thing, conservation and sustainability practices were kind of just already part of growing up and learning to be a Floridian. So I really honor my Florida heritage, love that Florida heritage.
No, it's so much just where you grow up, the environment you grow in. In that case, literally, you had to have those conversations.
Definitely. I was a little bit influenced by my father, is a civil engineer. And he actually worked a lot on restoring the Everglades. So I would always hear from him about projects they were doing to try to bring it back to its natural state. He works in floodplain engineering. So I guess water was always a big topic at our dinner table.
And then you came to Atlanta. You went to Georgia Tech, right?
Yep.
So tell us about your time at Tech. What'd you study? And I definitely want you to talk a little bit about studying abroad.
Certainly, yeah. So I kind of had a hard time choosing a college because I wasn't totally set on the major I wanted to pursue. It was the early 2000s, tech bubbles popping up everywhere. Sure. So I always had high grades in everything. I initially applied to Georgia Tech as a computer science major.
Okay. And
when I looked at the first semester courses, I said, gosh, this looks really boring.
Sure.
And so I instantly changed. I changed my major before I even started to architecture. Almost on a whim, honestly. I'm a little embarrassed to admit that sometimes because I've met a lot of other people in the architecture profession who knew forever that they wanted to be architects. When they were kids, they would just draw little floor plans of their houses, and it was just their path was set. For me, my path was never set. It just seemed like something really interesting to study, and another big draw on that was that Georgia Tech had an awesome program at the time. Unfortunately, it's since been retired. but they gave you an opportunity to spend your whole senior year abroad in Paris. And so, of course, I signed up for that. And I think that, too, had a deep influence on me, right? It's very different from that ecologically sensitive landscape, but it was a very socially mindful landscape. So that's where I really started using public transit, bus and rail a ton. I, went out of my way before the bike share programs became really popular. Through the local transit authority, you could take a long-term rental of a bicycle. So that was actually a really big part of my education, is being on a bicycle in the major city of Paris, seeing recycling bins on the public sidewalks, just really living and breathing what it means to be in a connected city. And so when I graduated, came back to Atlanta, I challenged myself to live car-free and take advantage of the transit and bicycles. And so at that time in 2005, this was before Atlanta had the Beltline, before we had any bike shares, before we even had a lot of bike lanes. I felt like a real road warrior, and that's kind of how we met, when I was still on a bicycle.
That's right. Well, I know you love to cycle, and I bet that time in France really did influence you. So you came back, you worked in architecture for a little while, and then you got a lot of lead experience fast, right? Because you were on the lead reviewer side. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then absolutely, we'll tell the audience where we first met.
Totally. It was a little hard for me to break into sustainability, and I think a lot of us feel that challenge. We feel passionately heart-drawn towards something, but there's not always a clear path to get there. So while I was working at a very traditional architecture firm, feeling a little disenchanted at what we were building in the built environment in the early 2000s, I heard about LEED, and I said, you know what? These are the buildings I want to be a part of. This is what I want to attach my name to. Literally, when I heard about it, I was like, this was invented for me. I'm kind of an architect on the fringe. I'm, a tree hugger at heart. And it was just the perfect marriage for me and my career, because it allowed me to utilize my architectural education and background, but really be working and driving towards the objectives that matter most to me. So my real first introduction to LEED projects was as a LEED reviewer. And that was really fascinating, because I got to see a high volume and frequency of applications. And so I felt that I very quickly got connected to a lot of LEED buildings and very quickly leveled up my LEED knowledge. And the way I got there is I showed my passion, I showed my initiative by going out independently, earning my LEED credential, paying for it on my own, self-studying, and passing that exam.
Nice.
So when I saw that job opportunity open up, I would just search job boards, LEED. I wanted to get into it. A lot of the major architecture firms didn't have a ton of opportunities there. But where I saw the growth and where my whole career took off rapid growth is in the niche market of LEED. So it was really exciting to be a reviewer, and that was kind of around LEED version 2. Right, it was like the transition of LEED V2 to LEED V3. And so just being engaged in that development and really having that inside view was awesome. And if anybody listening thinks that sounds like a cool job, those opportunities are still out there. They're generally concentrated in a couple firms, but if you ask around, you can figure out who's doing it and get that job, But the kind of my evolution out of that, and what really drew me to the work Charlie's doing, is as a certification specialist, you really don't get hands-on, right? You're just kind of getting that glimpse, getting the big overview. You get to, use your red pen a lot if that's exciting for you, to look for mistakes. But you don't have that engagement. You don't have the ability to really see people change and evolve as you teach them what kind of power this is going to bring to our society.
And so, we were growing Sustainable Investment Group, SIG, and Alison was our first full-time hire, so that was exciting. Jason and I interviewed you. I think you rode your bike there to that dinner interview that evening.
Yep.
And, we were growing and needed someone with the lead for new construction experience at the time and lead for schools, eventually lead for existing buildings, and gave that a go for, over 5 years plus. And Alison, you are a great consultant. You really can be persuasive with a client. I think sometimes people can be intimidated, by what should we be doing and who's this expert. But, you really can show them that this is the right thing to do. Sure, there's a certain amount of points to get. Do we want gold? Can we get there? But, you've worked on many projects, but you had a passion for farming and took a little time off. And I think for those listening, sometimes people go on a sabbatical, but maybe they can come back. And that is part of our story, Alison and I, our relationship. So she went off and worked on some organic farms. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a tree hugger at heart, and that is never going to leave me. Sometimes I think back and I'm like, if I had to do college all over again, I might get a degree in forestry or, wildlife management and like be a park ranger. I think in another life, I was probably a park ranger. And that's just where I like to be. I like to be in the sun. I like to have boots on my feet, mud on my knees, stuff like that. And so I also just like to try a lot of things, so I went to college because I knew that was a good path for me. I tried the professional world and I just said, I see this other world out there and I want to check it out. I need to explore that before I get too old, right? I was 30 years old, had my 30th birthday, and it just seemed like the right time to take a risk. And so I said, if I'm going to be a sustainability champion, if I want to tell people the best way to treat the earth, I need to educate myself a little more. So I really see it as deepening my ecological education by going through a farming apprenticeship. I actually did a 6-month apprenticeship course, which was really neat. I had to apply and get accepted. And so I had a group of peers that were going through this with me. It was through a nonprofit called Low Country Locals First, and they just supported local businesses, the local food movement, and small farmers. And so it was a combination of kind of like classroom lecture training and practical hands-on field work in the farm. I got paired up with a farming mentor. The name of the farm was called Soul Haven. Nice. And some of the primary crops we grew were fresh herbs like basil. We harvested a lot of basil, and the roselle for tea plant. He actually did some of his farming education in Thailand, where they grow a lot of this hibiscus tea, right? And so he said, I want to bring this back to America. He happened to be in the right climate to grow it. So we were growing hibiscus tea on Johns Island in South Carolina, processing it, drying it, reselling it to people. And it was really awesome. At that time, we also had a neighboring farmer who was growing ginger and turmeric, another really just unique kind of crop that worked in that ecosystem. And I was loving that. I was kind of drawn to that region. I had some family there. It was on the coast. I love my coastal environments. But I always had it in the back of my mind that, where's all our food come from? The majority of U.S. grown produce is coming out of California. So I set my sights. I said, I'm giving myself this time. I'm going to learn to be a farmer. I want to go to ground zero where organic farming is happening in America. So I drove across the country. That was an exciting thing in itself. There was a lot of the American West I hadn't seen before. Sure. So took a massive road trip, ended up in California, ended up on a really interesting farm. It was called Farm-A-Lot, kind of like Camelot, Farm-A-Lot. And boy, they worked us hard. We worked 6 days a week. And so if you think farming is a sabbatical from your office job to take a break, don't do it. You're going to work extra hard, actually. But you're going to learn a lot. I mean, it taught me not only how to grow food, but how to eat food, how to prepare food. When you hang around farmers enough, you're going to learn that they don't waste food, right? You can eat the tops of carrots. You can eat, the leaf and the root of a radish. A lot of people cut off half the plant and throw it away thinking it's, not edible or something, or they just don't want to eat it. So it even opened my eyes up to a lot of ideas on how to eat, but most importantly, how we treat our soil. Because a good farmer will tell you that what they are doing is improving the soil. You improve the soil, then all you have to do is put a seed in it, right? Plants want to grow on their own. That's what they do. The biggest thing stopping them is the soil. And so I am so excited that finally there's now science behind this as well. The Rodal Institute up in the Northeast U.S. has done decade-long trials on no-till farming to create evidence that says we can store carbon in our soil. And I get so excited by these ideas. People want to come up with these complex ways to remove carbon with our atmosphere. There's actually a lot of traditional ways that we can store the carbon in very safe manners in the plants and the soil.
That's exciting. I was in Berlin recently for the Green Build Europe conference. Very honored to go. They had a guest speaker, Selena Jewell. She has an initiative about food waste, and I didn't realize 1/3 of the world's food is wasted.
Yep.
And so she's got a big initiative. She's out of Denmark there. So you're right about using every part of a plant. And so much of it in developing countries actually gets wasted, not when it gets to the consumer and left over in a refrigerator, but even during just after it's harvested and getting to the market. There's a lot wasted there too. So clearly you're passionate about that. You and I have kept in touch. I've always known you as a great trainer, right? You're a great teacher. You're
Thank you.
very passionate about teaching. And, I've been growing the businesses. And I said, hey, Alison, I really need some help here to make best-in-class education at GBES. And so for the last year, you joined the team and really with some enthusiasm. So a lot of the audience here has been seeing some of the work Alison and her team's doing, but now back at it as a professional, but on the education front, picking some of those topics that you really know people need to hear, need to learn about, and getting them out to the mass market. So I think that's what attracted you to GBES, and I just thank you for joining the team and doing a great job.
You're welcome. It's awesome to be here. I love this job. I get to just talk about things that I'm passionate about all the time. And it's really eye-opening for me. I've been on this path for 10 years now, just deepening and narrowing my focus in environmental architecture and sustainability. And so a lot of these things are second nature to me. I was just talking with one of our interns and she's like, well, what is that? What is that? And I realized that I actually do have a lot to share. I've kind of reached this point where I feel confident to call myself a subject matter expert, and I want to share that. And that's part of my title, actually, Charlie. I know you and I like to joke about it a lot, but we saw this on somebody's business card. It said Sustainability Maven. I literally had to Google it. I thought maybe a Maven's kind of like a superhero, right? But what is a Maven really? We looked it up, and it's someone who collects knowledge in a particular area and then shares it with people. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is me. So love that title. That's what I'm passionate about.
That's awesome. Let's rewind a little bit. Who had some influence during your career so far? Was there an early mentor?
Certainly. I think an organization that really influenced me as a youth would be the Girl Scouts of America, Scouts. Sure. I don't know if you know this about me. I was a scout for a really long time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that also just kind of ingrained in me how to treat the earth. I remember anytime we would just have a day picnic or an overnight camp, our troop leaders always made us spend time before we went home cleaning up, leaving the place better than we found it. And so that has just stuck with me. But then, my first real architecture job, It was a pretty boring cube job, making sections of stairs and elevations of restrooms, typical first year architectural intern stuff. But I got to thank Kylie, my cube mate. I've lost touch with her now, but she was the first person to let me know about LEED.
Wow.
And we knew that our company was kind of, not really outstanding or anything. And she said, if you want to get a better job, you need this credential. So, just a friend, a peer, and she was really only a couple years ahead of me at that time. So when I was thinking about these questions, I thought, you know what? A mentor doesn't always have to be someone twice your age who walks with you forever. She was in my life. She's out of my life. But she made a difference,
Awesome.
for a reason or a season. So I really looked to her. And then the first architecture job I really enjoyed is when I moved on to Kronberg Wall. Had a great boss there, Eric Kronberg.
Yeah.
And similar to kind of how you interviewed me, one takeaway that I really enjoyed from him is that, if you really want to get to know a person, take them out to dinner, see how they treat their wait staff. And so that also just really stuck with me kind of, it's not always about how skilled are you at this computer program or whatnot, but if I'm going to spend time with these people, what kind of person are they really? And you can find that out pretty easily.
Absolutely. No, it's a part of what we do when we hire. No, you're right. A mentor doesn't have to be someone that is regularly there, but it could be that pivotal moment. Just, hey, I care about you. I want to tell you this piece of wisdom, and hopefully you'll take this advice. So that's pretty cool. Alison, let's talk a little bit about some of your achievements. What are some of your proudest achievements to date?
So I shared one, which was driving across the country and farming in the Central Valley of California. I think that was something that, as a young adult, it's that American dream almost, that feeling of freedom and to do something that you really want to do. So I did that. I think I can die happy now. But I really had to chew on this one a lot. I think I've had a lot more personal accomplishments that I'm excited about. As far as career accomplishments, I've had a pretty non-traditional kind of career. And so in that time off I took while I was farming, I also started my own LLC. And that was also something that was kind of a life goal for me. I've always wanted to be my own business owner. And when I was in college, I kind of thought maybe I'll run my own architecture firm. And, that sounded cool. I've always had that entrepreneurial kind of spirit. I think you get that, Charlie. And that's why maybe we're always challenging each other to come up with the best solutions and stuff. But I decided, you know what? I wanted to be a business owner. I had to just try it. And so took that leap of faith, took that risk. Did an LLC, that step is way easier than people think. You can start a business real quickly, but to make it profitable, make it grow, that's the hard part. So I started my business. It's called Yes Yoga. It was a yoga business, just trying to change the world that way, get people to think about treating themselves better and maybe they'll treat the earth better. That was kind of the perspective I was taking there. I tried that for 2 years until I decided, you know what, I want to evolve my own life and create a higher quality of life for myself. And so that's why I was very excited to learn about this opportunity with GBES and continue to just push my passion forward. I think every step I take, I'm just getting closer and closer to the best fit for me.
Well, I know you still love yoga. 150 hours certified instructor?
200.
200 hours, excuse me. So from time to time at the office, we need to do it more, but maybe some Allison-led yoga lessons. If anyone wants to visit our Atlanta office, let us know. You've still got a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in you. I see more businesses in the future. And for those listening that maybe manage a team, maybe own a business, you might be afraid to hire someone that has that entrepreneurial spirit. But no, I think it can make some of the best teammates. And so
cool. That's good to hear.
I think it's actually not threatening, but where do you want to be? And how can we help each other along the way? So that's the kind of attitude we have around here. Alison, let's talk about what are you working on today? What's exciting? What's to come? Anything you can give the audience a little sneak peek on?
Totally, totally. So, of course, we know in the green building world, the buzzword is well buildings. So, I've been working on some really cool well courses, gonna really dig into the lighting concept, try to demystify, CRI, CCT, all these color quality issues. I'm also looking at, nourishment. I love that section, of course, with my interest in farming. So I'm trying to bring in experts that know more than myself. That's another cool part of my job is I get to seek out people that know even more than me. Nice. And then make that digestible, bring it to people that need to get that hand up on the ladder. That's what it's all about, is just making easy pathways for all of us to level up our knowledge. So the other thing I'm really excited about is case studies. We are going to get behind the scenes on some buildings and show you what does it actually take to get LEED or WELL certified? What do these things look like? And hopefully get some people to be a little vulnerable, tell us about how they overcame their challenges, right? That's what we really want to hear and learn from. So, and I'm always open to ideas. If you've got a great case study and you just need help telling the story, that's what my team can do for you. So I'd love to hear from people that are listening to this. What do you have that you want to share and need help sharing? Or what do you want to see more of? We're always open to that too.
So you mentioned well. What else is coming? What do you see around the corner, Allison? What's the crystal ball say? Sustainability, green buildings. What do you think we need to be reading up on? What's coming down the road?
Great question. Our industry is cool because it's always evolving. But it also puts a lot of pressure on people like you and I, Charlie, because we need to stay ahead of it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So the big things I'm excited about are the other complementary rating systems, things like sites, which again, it's all about the soil. It's all about making sure that what's actually in the earth holding us all up is supporting life. And so I think if we just have a little more education around that piece, a lot of people are avoiding it because they don't understand the value, the importance of it. And so it sounds like I need to do more education on how this is really going to help us all. So sites, I'm excited about True. I'm excited about getting to zero waste. The other buzzwords that I'm super excited about, though, are things that are smart and resilient. We just had a Smart Cities Forum recently here in our office, that was so much fun because we were talking about these big ideas, things that aren't even happening yet, right? That's the other part of what we need to do is make sure that people are using their imaginations, coming up with new ways of doing things and then testing them out. What I've learned is that there's a lot of support to test ideas. There's even a lot of funding. I was at a conference recently and someone in the venture cap world basically told us that there's a lot of bad projects that are getting funded. And these angel investors need to ask themselves, like, yes, I can fund this, but should I? And that was a little troubling because it makes you wonder, like, who's going after all this money and why? So if you've got a great idea, share it out there. There are people that want to hear it, and they're apparently funding bad ideas because there's a lack of good ideas. So that was eye-opening for me. But to this idea of sustainability, I'm actually personally trying to avoid using that word. And I've been having conversations with Charlie about how I even want to change my title and call myself a resilience educator because I'm seeing a real deep trend that sustainability almost denotes that things are going to stay the same, right? We're going to sustain them in perpetuity. And we all know that entropy exists in the universe, like that's not going to help. And moreover, why do we want to sustain something that was good for yesterday? We want to make sure that we are continuously improving to be the best for tomorrow. So I am going to predict a trend in our industry to, I think slowly, because like we always say, there's people still joining this movement, right? A lot of people are still new to the idea of green and sustainable. But I think a lot of people are also see those as weak words. And to really inspire and motivate and add some longevity, I'm seeing people talking in terms of smart and resilient. Now, I think smart is still almost too generic. It's like calling things green, right? It's green, it's smart. Like, what does that really mean? But resilience, I mean, we talk about this. City of Atlanta, they changed their Office of Sustainability to Office of Resilience. And that really solidified it in my mind that that's what we want to be aiming for. And resilience is another one of those tricky words that people try to avoid defining because they don't want to get it wrong. I'm working on my elevator pitch for it, but it's basically the ability to adapt to short-term trauma and it's like acute trauma and long-term stress. So anything from an extreme weather event to something like steadily increasing population growth. Both of those things are stressors on cities, and we can design systems, infrastructure, models to help adapt to that and be resilient. So to me, sustainability is a little bit about staying in a mold, whereas resilience is really about being open to change. One of my favorite quotes, the only constant is change.
So you heard it here: wellness, smart building, smart grid, and resiliency. Good stuff, Allison. What's your specialty? What's your gift so far in your career and in your life?
Well, I would say it is not Revit models. I'm glad I got past that one. That was also kind of an indicator of maybe this is not the traditional path, is not for you. But really, my gift is training and teaching. And so that's been evident as my role as a green building professional, as well as a yoga teacher. I just can't even deny it anymore. Like, I am a teacher. I'm here to teach. And so I teach what I know, I teach what I'm passionate about it. And when I see something new, I go learn about it so I can continue teaching it. Another interesting specialty I have, and I don't even know how to kind of quantify this. It's maybe more of just a pattern or a trend, but I've found myself helping companies grow. And I'd like to think that I had a nice hand in that. It's not just a, coincidence on timing, but the 3 companies I've been with that have really, I felt dedicated to, I helped them expand. And I really love that. And I think part of that is I'm really good in the onboarding process, training new team members, creating training materials. That was actually a big part of my job when I worked at Epstein Group in the certification team, and making sure that people are always up to date on the latest addendas. People understand our standing operating procedures. So yeah, I'd say teaching and helping people grow.
I agree. Well, what routines, rituals do you have to keep you being successful?
I love this question. We could do a whole nother hour just on this topic, right, Charlie, but I'll try to keep it short for y'all. So one of the things I like to do every day, as early as possible, kind of rub the sleep out of your eyes, and then I like to get outdoors. I like to walk on the earth. I like to smell the earth, see the trees, look at what's blooming today. That's always an exciting thing. What's blooming, where are the mushrooms sprouting, what has fallen. So I just do that in my local
It's a sign of life. Yard. Yeah, you get out and see. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, get motivated, connect to the earth. And then I like to meditate, whether it's for a minute or 15 minutes. I try not to put too much judgment on that, but just make sure I get that in. So that, helps me come into a place of peace and patience. And another tip that I want to recommend to everybody is to put mantras on your mirror. So maybe this is, your bathroom mirror as you're brushing your teeth, getting ready in the morning. You see these visual reminders to motivate yourself. And they can be simple. I have one that says, be gentle. Just a reminder, be gentle to myself, be gentle to others. It's one you just look at, take a deep breath. Some of the other interesting ones, I want to share this one with you, and this is a little vulnerable. This is where I'm starting to get into kind of, am I a yoga teacher or an environmental teacher? But I think this can help anyone. And this mantra is, I am in control of how I accept me. And that basically takes responsibility for your own emotions and not to let other people's fears or anger bring you out of your center, out of your zone of peace. And so that's just another reminder I like to have, to remind myself that I am in control. I'm the only one that can let myself be in a bad mood today. And sometimes it happens, I'm not perfect, but it's good to have that reminder and say, yeah, that was on me.
And no one is. It's a mindset shift. Thanks for sharing a peek into some of your daily rituals. That's really cool. A few more questions here. I'm a fan of the bucket list.
Yep.
I think you know that. So what are one or two items yet to be done, Alison, on your bucket list?
Totally. So I'm a traveler, love traveling. One place I have not been yet is India. And as a yoga teacher, people ask me all the time, so have you been to India yet? What ashram did you go to? None, not yet. It just hasn't happened yet. So that's on my bucket list. Not too hurried to get there, but we got Greenbuild, India, November 2018. So got my eyes set on that one. And another one that I have, I think this one is a little further out, but it's to grow and store all of my own food. This is something that, one of my personal goals is to have a homestead, have a farm, and to be harvesting and storing that food to be able to feed myself and my family for a year. So that's going to take some more training, some more education on my part. Not quite there yet, but that is a dream of mine, and that definitely fits in to the definition of resilience, right? If you're not dependent on commercial grocery chains, you're not dependent on, overland transportation to get your food, you are in control of your food. And so I'd say there's kind of one caveat on that. Maybe I could trade with my neighbors. So if I had a surplus of potatoes, maybe I'll trade for some butter there.
That's fair. A little barter.
But basically to know where all my food comes from and hopefully have a hand in creating it. That's on my bucket list.
Love it. Is there a book you've read recently, or maybe one remember you think this is a highly recommended book? Maybe it'd make a good gift for someone.
Totally. So I am actually just getting into this book, barely past the introduction, but it came highly recommended to me by a trusted friend, and it's by Steven Pinker. It's called Enlightenment Now. But this isn't a yoga book. This isn't a meditation book, actually. The whole title is Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress. And it's nonfiction. It is pretty thick. And it's just full of reports, statistics, evidence about how we actually have fewer gun deaths than before. There's actually less crime, less violence, less civilian casualties of war than in the, bigger picture of the timeline of civilization. And so it was recommended to me because I love to be able to look at the positive. I love to focus on those positive news stories. And unfortunately, our mainstream media isn't necessarily publishing those, right? It's all about death and war and guns. But the reality is the science, the progress of it is that we have become more tolerant in society. We have become safer societies. I know it may not always feel that way, but if that's something you've been wondering about, start this book. I am really excited to get deeper. Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker, because it shows that things are getting better. And like you and I talk about, Charlie, it's that mentality, right? If you keep that positive outlook, you're going to attract a lot more of that to you.
Thank you for that book recommendation. And you're right, focus on the positive. Human nature is to quickly go to the negative, what's wrong, what's broken. And you know what? Let's take a look at what's actually working and focus there more.
Yeah.
Last question, Alison, what advice do you wish you had maybe early in your career, or just any words of encouragement for someone jumping into this green building movement?
Certainly. So advice I wish I'd received earlier is to just be myself. As a young professional, I was always struggling with, am I wearing the right things? Am I styling my hair right to fit in? Like, how can I get people to look at me and respect me as a professional. That was always a concern, and partially because I rose to leadership positions at young ages, and I always had fears that I wasn't being received well as a young person, particularly as a young woman in the real estate industry, which is dominated by old men. So now, though, years later, I have no problem just being myself. I wear what represents me because, the more events I go to, I see that one person who's, just being themselves, and people pick up on that. If you're comfortable, it puts other people at ease. So be yourself, be comfortable. And my encouragement, this is funny. I was actually at a conference and the theme was Think Big, and they were encouraging live tweeting during the conference. And so I tweeted, we need to think bigger. So my closing words here are think bigger. Don't just get stopped at what other people are doing or what seems to work. Challenge yourself to really push that envelope and dream big. Even if you have no idea how to achieve it, keep that pinned on your vision board, keep that idea out there, talk to people about it. You'll find someone who will make it happen. That's what's been really interesting for me. Whatever crazy idea I think I have that's totally left field, I've met someone else who shares that and wants to realize it with me. So be yourself and think bigger.
Alison, great words. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to some of Alison's story. I'm grateful to have you on the team.
Thank you.
Just excited about everything we've got going on. And look out for some of the really fun education we're going to be putting out soon. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Be well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast, tell your colleagues, and if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.